welcome in all of you no off-seasoners for another episode of your new favorite fantasy football podcast. Today, kind of going away from the fantasy statistics rankings for a little bit, almost done with our projections here. We're actually going to talk about some main headlines coming out of the first couple days of training camp across the NFL. At this point, it is now officially NFL season. All 32 teams have started training camp, and man, it is just in the air. It just smells like football. You get on Twitter, it's football. You get on TikTok, it's football. All the beat writers are having hand cramps at this point, and we're getting hype off drops by the guy on the depth chart in front of your favorite wide receiver. We're getting hyped off of diving catches in front of 5-foot separation because the cornerback is on the second or third string. Yeah, we're getting hyped for that. Let us be hyped for that. This is fantasy sports. Let us live in our fantasy world where even training camp videos matter. And they do. Training camp videos, training camp hype videos, it all matters. It's all news. So, that's the name of our segment. News or booze. If it's news, then obviously we should be keeping an eye on this. And it's noteworthy, significant, important. You get the deal. You get the gist. If it's booze, it sucks. We don't care about that story. Don't waste our time with that story. I still got to bring it up so I can tell you if it's booze or not. All right, first one. Let's start with one of the teams in the Big Apple. It's going to be the Jets, and Zach Wilson coming off a monster offseason, scored the only points that we know of this offseason across the NFL. And it doesn't have to do with Zach Wilson necessarily. If it affects him, it certainly affects him. And that's the offensive staff plan on moving former first-round pick Mekhi Becton from just 2020, from the left tackle position to the right tackle. That's good and bad. It's certainly news. It is certainly news. And that's because they've named Morgan Moses, the starting left tackle, in Becton's spot. Yeah, that's really bad news for Zach Wilson because Morgan Moses allowed the 10th most pressures. That's hits, sacks, and hurries. Brought to you by Pro Football Focus. So the 10th most pressures in the entire NFL among all offensive linemen last season in 2021. I mean, and you could tell. I mean, a lot of the Jets' offensive linemen struggled. Zach Wilson, one of the most sacked quarterbacks last season. Mike White as well during his stint while Wilson was out. Yeah, this is bad for Zach Wilson in my opinion. But there is a silver lining. There's good news for the offense. Mekhi Becton is a hell of a blocker. And you got to remember, he's coming from Louisville, who certainly runs way more than it passes, whether it's the quarterback or the halfbacks. So he's more naturally a better run blocker. He had a very, very roller coaster of a rookie campaign in 2020. He was very good in some games, and then there were some games he was just not existent. And then last year, season ended on week 1 against the Panthers. So, yeah, Mekhi Becton is a monster. You know, on the field, he's just so much bigger than everyone else. Doesn't have, the foot speed. However, on the right side, we just have to get him into space and leave that C gap open for the outside zone scheme there for Breece Hall, the new toy, one of the newest toys that they've got. For Zach Wilson and the New York Jets up there. So that's exciting for Breece Hall and that backfield. Zach Wilson might be having to throw on the run a little bit more this season. Morgan Moses is an interesting pick to slide to left tackle after allowing so many sacks, hits, and hurries on the quarterback last season. So that is most certainly news. Let's move to something that is not news, and that is the Atlanta Falcons, the Dirty Birds. Name Marcus Mariota, QB1, starter. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, we knew that. We all knew that. You gave him a 2-year contract. You know, the former top 2 pick is not going to be benched behind a 3rd-round rookie. That's Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. Both come from very similar offensives. Arthur Smith, obviously, used to coach him there in Tennessee where he was originally drafted, which felt like a decade ago, but was not. So, yeah, Arthur Smith obviously has history with Marcus Mariota, and we always knew it was going to be him. You know, does this mean that he's going to start all season? I mean, he's on a 2-year contract, but no, it doesn't mean that at all. I think by week 10, the Atlanta Falcons, maybe even sooner than week 10, will probably be playing a bunch of meaningless games. So they may as well see what they've got in Ridder, right? You start Mariota because he gives you the better chance of winning. And after millions of prayers, a miracle could potentially happen in which the Atlanta Falcons make a wild card or win the division and beat Brady, Winston, and Baker Mayfield. But right now, yeah, it's going to be Mariota to hopefully win you some games. And once you lose too many, everything becomes meaningless, and you're kind of just waiting to see where you land in the first round of the draft for next year. So I think you will see some Ridder later on, because I just don't think Atlanta has the roster, truthfully, to even be a contender in this division at all, much less the conference. So Mariota being named the starter is not news at all. That is straight boos. Let's boo the Dirty Birds of Atlanta. And we're going to travel to the other side of the country in Santa Clara, where the San Francisco 49ers are hosting their training camp. Just got started, and their number 1 pass catcher last year in Deebo Samuel showed up, surprisingly. Deebo Samuel, who's requested a trade previously, which I think we all believe was more of a tactic to get the contract done and agreement done with the 49ers front office rather than actually wanting to be traded. And I've said this about teams in the NFL draft. They always tell you what they're going to do with their actions and not what they say to the media. Same thing with players. Deebo kind of showed his hand today. This is news. First of all, this is news. Here's why. You and your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, your significant other. Let's say you get into a fight. There's tension, yada, yada, yada. All right, you take a little break. Stop seeing each other for a little bit. Then you start sending out some text saying, hey, we're going to have this family get-together, this barbecue. They do. They show up. And that gives you hope, right? And here's why. If they don't show up to anything that you invite them to anymore that seems important to you, they're gone. My brother in Christ, you need to move on. But if they start showing up to things that are important to you, and they start texting you back, start sending emojis, start showing their hand a little bit, flirting with you, that's what Deebo's doing. He's flirting back with the 49ers. Truthfully, I don't think he wants to go anywhere. I think that's home for him. And again, your ex doesn't show up because she's done with you. Deebo showed up. Deebo is sending signals. Deebo is sending heart emojis to the 49ers front staff right now, waiting for that agreement to be done. So that way Trey Lance can have his best pass catcher out there. So that's news. And we're going to move back again to the East Coast for the Carolina Panthers, where Matt Rule made it known that there's going to be a QB battle. And these kids are going to duel. From the 2018 draft class, pick number 1, Baker Mayfield, who was just traded for a conditional 5th-round pick to the Cleveland Browns in exchange for Baker. And you didn't warn Sam Darnold about trading for Baker. You also drafted Matt Corral out of Ole Miss in the 4th round. So, yeah, you're showing your hand here. We already know you're not all in on Sam Darnold. That experience is over. But you're going to tell the media that this is a battle. So, I don't blame Matt Rule. This is what he has to say. This is what he has to say. But truthfully, it's just about getting Baker ready for week 1. That's what it is. You would not have drafted Matt Corral. You would not have sought to trade for another quarterback, much less someone who's in the same age range, same draft class, unless you intended on leaning on that quarterback. Because again, this team, this coaching staff, they are one bad season away from being out. So they did the right thing. They bring in Baker. They would be doing the worst possible thing by wasting that 5th round pick and starting Sam Darnold anyway because he won the QB battle. There's no battle. This is not news. This is just media talk that Coach Matt Rule has to say because he can't tip his hand yet. That's booze. That's straight booze. I am your host, Jay Anaya. Again, I appreciate you stopping in for one of the newest segments here on the No Offseason Fantasy Pod. And, projections coming out super soon for all other skill positions. RBs, wide receivers, and tight ends. That is all coming out. We're not doing kickers or DSTs. We're not ranking them. We're not projecting them. Go find that somewhere else. I'm not going to waste your time or mine for those kinds of rankings. It's football season, y'all. I hope that coffee, hope that whiskey, hope that whatever the hell's in your cup tastes great. Because it's only going to start tasting better. You know what it's like coming home on a Thursday, Monday, knowing there's freaking football that night? That's the best. That's the best. And it's almost here. Less than 50 days, that's for sure. This is the No Offseason Fantasy Pod. I'm Jay and I'll catch you guys on the next one.